Hello, Santa Rosa Symphony subscribers and donors. We're now in April, and in really just about another month or so, we will have completed our entire 2020-21 season. The fact that we've had a season at all is somewhat remarkable, but it truly is amazing to think that with this amazing team we have here at the Santa Rosa Symphony and all of you supporting us and being on this journey with us, we were one of the first orchestras to start our season back in the fall in October. And we will now be one of the only orchestras in the world that was able to complete an entire season of concerts. In fact, in a typical season for us, we'll do about 7 classical weeks. And this year we actually put together 8 classical weeks. So it's been just amazing to be able to share these wonderful experiences with you, but we miss so much having you in the hall. I know you all miss being there, getting to experience the music in person, but we're looking to the future with great optimism and can't wait to be able to gather again. In the meantime, we have still some fantastic musical experiences to bring you this season. Today, you'll have a chance to get to know the violinist Jennifer Frautschi through our conversation and this wonderful recital that she's given us with the Saint-Saëns Violin Sonata. So please enjoy. So hello, Jennifer. Thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me and this fantastic recital. I know everyone is just going to have such an amazing experience getting to listen to this Saint-Saëns Sonata. Just wanted to check in with you. You know, obviously, we're so sorry we can't all be in the concert hall together enjoying some great music. And, you know, this has just been that kind of year, or now a year, you know, almost more than a year at this point.
Beyond a year, because it was over a year that I was originally supposed to come out. I think it was mid-March. It was like, I think the first cancellation I had, actually.
Oh my goodness.
You know, I don't remember the exact dates, but it was like the second or third week of March, actually, third week of March, that I was supposed to come in 2020.
Wow.
Play with
Wow.
Sonata.
Well, I guess in some ways time has gone by faster than, but I don't know. Wow, that's
faster or slower. It's hard to tell.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's obviously, you know, every musician has had to adjust and find all kinds of, you know, new ways to do what we love to do. And just wanted to check in, you know, how are you doing? How has this year been? You know, what has been your experience of this time?
Well, I think my answer now is very different from what it might have been, you know, if we'd been talking last summer, because it's really, there's been, I think, a big kind of evolution since it has been over a year. And so I would say that, you know, since August of last summer, late August, so heading into the fall season, to right now, we're already in April, but I've had a really, I have to say I've had a really great year and had a really great season, in the sense that, I mean, it's very different from past seasons as it has been for everyone. But I have been able to perform in one way or another consistently since then. And so in that way, I know I'm very, very lucky and very fortunate to have, you know, had and to continue to have the opportunity, first of all, just to see other musicians, which, you know, was not the case a year ago, right? Because we were, I mean, all of us were quite isolated, but especially as musicians. You know, you could get together with people outside, you know, a year ago, but it was like to get together and play music was, seemed, and it was actually practically an impossibility. So in that sense, I've had a mixture of, even actually since late last summer, concerts for audience, which is, you know, when you say that now, like, you always have to specify, and it's such a rarity and such a privilege and such a joy to be able to play for people, you know, whether, you know, in small groups, has been exclusively the case, of course, some of it outside, most of it actually indoors. And then I've done a fair amount of, you know, like what this concert is, which is a recording that's either live streamed actually in real time or broadcast or streamed later. So the fact that I've been able to, you know, since early fall, connect with so many of my musician friends and colleagues, because a lot of the people I play with, of course, are good friends as well, because, you know, it's a small community. That has been extremely nourishing for me. And first of all, of course, just, gives me an opportunity to do what I love. And also because it's such an unusual time and, a lot of things are kind of organized, things are canceled at the last minute, things are reorganized, reconfigured at the last minute. It has meant that, to an unusual degree this past year, I've been able to kind of shape what I play or, when we're coming up with programs, because everything is a little bit on the, done on the fly or more last minute than in usual times when things are planned years out or, at the very least, at least a year in advance. And, things that we might have originally programmed 2 years ago for this year aren't going to work. So just to say, for me to be able to suggest things I want to play and, that's been really fun to be able to work on repertoire that, like 2 months, to say, I really want to play this piece in 2 months and then have it happen, that just in the old days didn't happen. And the other aspect of what I have been doing is I teach violin in the graduate program at Stony Brook University. And that's almost exclusively doctoral students. And, that was for all of us who teach, of course, in every level of education. It was a big shift a year ago or March of last year, and figuring out, especially with music, how to be able to, it's one thing to meet online, which all of us figured out quickly with Zoom and so on. And, what we used to use, which is like FaceTime and Skype and, Google Hangouts or Google Chat. But to be able to connect with students and actually hear them play in a rough approximation of what music should sound like over this medium, initially. So that's why my answer now is very different than when it would have been a year ago. It was for all of us who teach music. It was really rough going a year ago, just trying to figure out which platform to use and what microphones to use and getting the students to a point where you could actually make out what they were playing in real time. That was really a big adjustment. But now that we've got that all figured out, we've discovered all these, that it's really great to be able to, check in with students, in a much more regular fashion than I used to be able to do, because now we realize you can be anywhere and meet online and actually have a meaningful exchange of musical ideas. And also just for group gatherings, it's like you and I having this interview or this chat that we're having, like we get together at Stony Brook for regular studio classes and people can just, I could say, hey, Francesco, you want to pop in and talk to the class, for example, and wouldn't have really conceived of doing that pre-pandemic, right? Because we'd be in person and, if you're in Santa Rosa or wherever you were conducting, wouldn't be possible for you to just pop in. But now, that kind of flexibility, it's really kind of expanded, our, the reach and the way we can connect, in that pedagogical setting. So anyway, so that's what I've been up to. I've been performing. I have been traveling, not a lot, but a little bit to play, since last fall, and just in teaching. And actually, now that we're, Stony Brook has been remote this entire year. But we are slowly transitioning to being back in person. So actually this, people keep talking about silver linings, of course. And one of them is that, I do have a lot more flexibility and availability these days for the obvious reason that there are far less concerts or very few concerts, right? So I've actually taken advantage of it now to play chamber music in groups with students who are around, because we have some students who are, in Europe and Asia and Brazil, of course, not with them, but people who are actually in the area where I live in New York. So there are 3 different groups I'm actually playing in and coaching from inside the group. And that is so fun for me, but also incredibly gratifying to have the opportunity and the time to do that.
I mean, and how fantastic for them to be able to do that as well, I'm sure.
Well, I hope so. And I have to say, apart from whatever benefit they might get from playing with me, they're just so happy to be playing with each other, to see each other, because that, if you talk to any musician, that many musicians I know have barely played with anyone in the past year, and that's a real loss.
Yeah, for sure.
Necessary, of course, because of safety, but.
Yeah. I wanted to double back on one of the things you said about just like, you know, getting to kind of choose the projects and the repertoire you get to work on, because I definitely, that's probably been the best thing about this year for me, is without there being expectations, like I can't program a Tchaikovsky symphony. So suddenly I'm not being held to certain standards, and I can create these programs that are just kind of a hodgepodge of things that I think people will love, that our musicians will have fun doing. I'd be curious if anything has in particular has stood out, maybe a composer or a piece you've gotten to do or a project. Has anything in particular stood out for me that you've had a chance to do this past year?
Well, several different things. Well, so speaking of small scale, a lot of the things with orchestra have had, you know, the things I'm actually doing with orchestra have had to be scaled down. So next month, I'm playing with an orchestra in Maine, the Bangor Symphony. And I think originally maybe Mendelssohn was programmed, but it was something with a larger orchestration. They said, we can't do that. We need we have smaller forces. And there were a couple suggestions I made, but the one that they went with, it was Mozart's first concerto, which is a B-flat concerto, which is something that I had played like at the very beginning of my career. I did a little tour with a small chamber orchestra, and it's a piece that I love. But usually, first of all, Mozart concerti don't get programmed that often pre-pandemic. Now they're getting programmed a lot more. Because everyone's been, you know, programming for those orchestras that are actually performing in person and programming Mozart 3, 4, 5 or the you know, major concerti. Number one is really beautiful, and I love it. And it's so youthful and has, you know, the charm of Mozart. It's great melodic writing. And but actually, the reason it was on my mind was because last fall, my daughter, who's now 12, was learning it. And so I was hearing it and thinking, oh, I want to play this. I want to play this because it's so great. I haven't played it since, you know, a long time ago when I, you know, last performed it. So, you know, that's just an example of like hearing the piece. And then, like also I mentioned, with that I'm playing with students, and two of the groups I'm playing with are string quartets. And you know, I've never been in, oh, that's not true. I was in a string quartet when I was at Juilliard, but then since then professionally, I've never been in a string quartet. But as you know, there's so much great repertoire. And I've played some of it, but there's a lot I haven't played. But these two groups, the students themselves picked relatively unusual repertoire, relatively unusual to, you know, what people usually play in string quartets. So one group picked Szymanowski First Quartet, which was completely unknown to me. And the other group picked Grieg Quartet in G minor. And that's, you know, a fantastic piece. And, you know, not something that's totally familiar either. So those are, you know, some examples of, or like, you know, I just played a couple weeks ago with Rhode Island Philharmonic. And the parameters, the group kept changing, how many people they could have on stage. So the programming went through so many different, that's what's funny about this time, iterations based on how many people they thought they could have on stage, and changing state, you know, restrictions and so on. So even though the concert was in May, as late as January, we hadn't settled on the program yet. And I went to a festival in January actually and played I actually sat in a small orchestra and played the Saint-Saëns Introduction Rondo Capriccioso, and with a friend of mine, Tessa Lark, wonderful violinist, who was playing the solo part. And you know, I played that piece a lot when I was a teenager, as a kid, and I love it. And I heard her play it. I was like, oh, I want to play this too. I want to play this too. So I suggested it to them, and they're like, yeah, sure. So then 2 months later, I got to play it. So that's that kind of thing would never have happened before, right?
It's so funny to see like returning to pieces that you played earlier, because conducting wise, I didn't really plan it this way, but because I have to do things with small groups, when you're in college or you do master classes, conducting wise, they only give you small groups. So right. It's been funny doing these, you know, like Tchaikovsky Serenade for strings, like the Brahms serenades, like pieces that I have all my markings from college, which is actually kind of embarrassing, honestly, to look at it now. But
right. It's kind of really hard cool to visit those old markings too.
Yeah. But it's cool to return to them in a professional setting and be like, okay, you know, like, let's see if I've actually learned anything over the years. That's really wonderful to hear. Jennifer, would love for everyone to get to just know you a little better and your background. Maybe you can tell us sort of, you know, where'd you grow up? Were there musicians in your family? What got you started on this wonderful path?
So I am a California native, which is why I'm especially disappointed not to be coming to Santa Rosa. But I'm from the South, so I was born and raised in Pasadena, California. My father is a physics professor at Caltech, which is in Pasadena, and I have an older sister named Laura Frautschi, who's also a professional violinist. But she started taking violin lessons at age 3, and so when I was born, I wanted to take lessons as well, as soon as I was old enough to talk. So when I was 3, before I turned 3, I started taking Suzuki lessons with my sister. And so the Suzuki method was a big part of my formation. And my sister and I eventually ended up, when I was 12 years old, at the Aspen Music Festival. And that was a big formative experience. And because I was exposed at that age to such serious orchestral playing and chamber music, but also the violin lessons I had were so, the other students were so serious. It was like Juilliard summer school, right? So there are all these Juilliard students there. So at that point, after that first summer in Aspen, my sister and I switched teachers to Robert Lipset, who's an amazing pedagogue, teaches now at the Colburn School in LA. So he was my teacher from the age of 12 until I ended up, when I was 18, going back east. I went to Harvard and then eventually Juilliard, where I studied with Robert Mann, who was the founder and first violinist of the Juilliard String Quartet. And after Juilliard, or while I was at Juilliard, I started concertizing, and here I am today. I am living in New York City, and as I said, teaching at Stony Brook, which is out on Long Island. And and by the way, I should also mention that you might not know this, but when I was, I think 18, I played with the Santa Rosa Symphony and played Lalo Sinfonia Spagnole with Corrick Brown, who is the music director then. And I think that was during my freshman year at Harvard, and I came back at some point during the year and played those concerts. So I'm sure it was in a different hall than you play. Yeah, actually, I know it's in a different hall than you play in now. But yeah. So that's ancient history. But.
Wow. Well, all the more reason we if you have you played yet then in the Green Music Center, our current hall?
I haven't. I've heard it's beautiful.
Yeah, all the more reason we got to get you out. and a shout out to Corrick, because I'm sure he'll be seeing this. That's wonderful.
I remember that fondly. And I remember, this is back when, people made CDs like after concerts. It was like a CD that was printed, and I can't remember if that recording was then, the CDs were printed to give to patrons or to donors exactly. But I received the concert CD, and there was a picture with me and Corrick on the front. And it's one of those, when you look back at photos from, this was early 90s, I think. But, it's like the hairstyle and everything just looks, on my end, I don't mean Corrick, he looks very dignified. But when I've run across that photo, I've laughed because it looks so, it looks so dated now with the dress, like with the ruffles. And anyway.
That's wonderful. Well, when we get you out to the hall, bring that photo along. We'll take a current version of you and Corrick together again when you're back out here. Jennifer, thank you so much for taking a little time to chat with me. And we can't wait to have you out in person so our audience can have a chance to once again get to hear you in person with our orchestra in the beautiful Green Music Center. And in the meantime, stay well, keep on doing all this wonderful work out there, and I really hope we can connect again soon.
Thanks to you as well. Thanks for having me play. I hope you enjoy.
Right. Thanks so much. Please enjoy this wonderful song, everyone.
I am violinist Jennifer Frautschi. I'm so sorry that I'm not going to be able to come out to Santa Rosa to get to play the SAINT-SAÄNS Violin Concerto with the Santa Rosa Symphony. But I'm very grateful for this opportunity to get to play for you in this format. I'm joined by my dear friend and colleague, pianist Pedja Muzijevic, who soloed with Santa Rosa Symphony about 5 or 6 years ago. Many of you will remember him, his performance of Schumann Concerto. And we're here at Yamaha Artist Services in New York City. Pedja and I are both residents of New York, so we're able to make this recording here. We're very grateful to Yamaha for giving us a space and the piano. And we hope you enjoy this performance of the SAINT-SAΕNS Sonata No. 1 for violin and piano in D minor, which is a piece that's both extremely lyrical and very virtuosic, very fun as well. So I hope you enjoy and look forward to seeing you again in person sometime in the future in California.
Thank you. Thank you.